You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hey, what's up, Jen?
Hello.
Game time. Love it.
Time. We had like weird power outages last night, and when I tried to go log on today, the Wi-Fi was like not having it.
I've been there, especially where my office is. It just doesn't seem to always work out right with the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi as we call it. But welcome everybody to another episode of I Must Ask You a Question. I'm James Hake, and of course, joined by the amazing Jen King.
Woo!
So how's your reading going along for, your Eisner Award judging that's coming up?
It's going good. I'm supposed to have a big box of stuff inbound because I guess that for a lot of it, people will provide readers, which is nice. I can read digitally, but I'll be quite honest. Like it, in my mind,
Oh no, computer strikes again. I'm not sure if that's my computer, if it's Jen.
No, that's her computer.
It's hers. Yeah. So Kyle, how are you?
Not bad. I'm not reading for the Eisners, but I it's an interesting kind of situation to watch Miss Jen go through. I'm going through something similar.
Okay.
I'm a voter for the Independent Spirit Awards, the IFC's Oscars.
Oh, very cool.
I'm going through a similar thing where I'm having to watch a bunch of movies.
Nice.
And I don't know what Miss Jen was going to say about reading digital versus real, but I will say this. If your movie's not in English, please include subtitles when you send the screener out.
That's helpful, right? Exactly.
I don't know what's happening in some of these movies,
Mm-hmm.
but Miss Jen, do you know what's happening in the comic books you're reading?
Oh, totally. So anyway, so I was basically saying that, like, for me, part of the experience of comic books is the reading physical copies. So I just don't know if I would never say I would like let it affect my opinion of a book like for an award, but it's definitely going to have a little bit of like influence just in my brain unintentionally, I think.
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way. And whenever I've read something digitally, because what I was doing for a while, first I would take our damaged copies. I have a treadmill in my office. So I'm trying to do like two birds, one stone, like do exercise while reading comics. And I would do a lot of stuff that we published so many books. I embarrassed to say I haven't read every single one of them. And I want to catch up on all of them. So I would take damaged copies and read them. But even then, when you sweat and stuff, it's like, even if they're already damaged, it still makes my heart break a little bit if I damage them more. So I was doing it on an iPad. And quite honestly, it's like much better for your eyes to read on it because it's all like pops out at you and stuff. But I agree with you. It's not the same when you're not physically holding the book. And I even go to say that like I prefer reading floppies more than I do the graphic novel, just because I don't know, it gives me time to break. That's just like, oh, here's a break time, whatever I'm doing. It just, I don't know. It's the one thing that makes me sad a little bit. Like I am a traditionalist to the old, like absolute old school. I love getting individual copies. And I know the graphic novel itself has helped really springboard our industry over the past 15 years. So many things that you weren't able to read unless you spent a fortune buying, you can now read thanks to the graphic novel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
even then, I don't know. I really prefer reading those floppies. I do. And what's so crazy is like I invented a different format because of how sales figures were, called nonstop, where you do the first issue and then you do the graphic novel. Because I mean, I've learned on this end, and I know we've talked about this in years ago, But it's an evergreen product, right? People love that first issue. Collectors come in and buy it, hoping it's the next TV show or movie. And you have variant covers that you can do. There's just tons of stuff. That issue one always sells in an industry where half of, your sales goes down immediately after from 1 to 2. It just kind of made sense, right? Because for some reason, graphic novels, the collector market, don't value them as much as they value the floppies. So this nonstop I thought was like the best of both worlds, where you come out with the first issue and then the graphic novel. But I personally, it hurts me because I love the episodic story, and I think it's dying off in comics in general. It's sad. I feel we talked about this, I think either last show or the show before, about the constant rebooting of like Marvel and not as much DC. Like what volume are they even on in Spider-Man anymore? I remember when it was such a big deal when they went to a volume 2, and then they'll go back for Legacy as a sales ploy, and then they go back. Like, if I was just talking to my warehouse manager yesterday, I was like, if his son came in, it's like, hey man, I bought Amazing Spider-Man #1. I would, unless it was the very first one, I would have no idea which one it would be. And like, reading
one or
yeah, or is it the one with like you just don't know. And Dan Slott's done multiple ones, right? They probably rebooted it with him 3 or 4 times. So I look at that and I know it's a constant struggle between retailers and publishers. It's because like retailers give us ongoing series and publishers like the order numbers don't reflect us continuing that. And then as a creator, it's just like, I can't keep on, being a writer who's paying for it. It's a long game. I mean, comics, I'd have to say in generalization, what I've learned on this side, it's a long game. If you're expecting fortune as a creator immediately out of the gate, this is not the industry that you do that. Now, does that happen? Sure, it does, but it happens more the other way. It's kind of like walking into Vegas, the house always wins. So typically that's what it is. So I don't know. It's a conversation that's going back and forth. And I know last time I talked to both you and Kyle about it, and you guys said you prefer those, you want to know, but it's tough. It's just a tough industry. I just think so many things are gravitating towards graphic novels.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is kind of like a two-pronged, because the old school guys want desperately to continue on with long form story. So we're losing some of those fellows because they just like they've kind of like, I would have stuck on Spider-Man for all of my life just so that I didn't have like a hole in my collection. But
it's a reason to jump off, right?
Yeah, so there's a jump off spot for those guys. But for the younger crowd that are trying to enter comic books, I feel like almost the like mini series or short form is better for them because it's not so overwhelming. Like if your only option was to jump in at Superman 1050, for example, which was a great issue, then it might be a little overwhelming. Like people would be like, I can't, there's no way I can go back and buy 1049 books to catch up to try to figure out what's going on. And it would take me all my life to do it. But if there's a clear jump on mini series, then they can try that at least, right? To get to know a character. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think we can make everybody happy, honestly.
I know it's one of those tough worlds. Here's the other thing. I don't, this is the first time I probably brought it up with you and Kyle, and I'd love to get Kyle's opinion too. I know you're listening, Kyle. But it's just fascinating. When I started off as a creator, I did Solar Flare and I kickstarted it. I did issue 1 through 6 to help pay for the art, which was the first story arc. And I remember deciding before I decided to go with Scout, it was all about, like in my mind and on the Kickstarter platform, the money maker is the graphic novel. It's like, yeah, this is where you're going to get some big money. It's harder to do single issues because, it's only one and you can't charge that much for it. You have to be really creative with your add-ons. So, and you look at a lot of the Kickstarters out there, even bigger companies like Boom, Image, Skybound. I mean, they're going into this market. And the graphic novels do gangbusters for them. So when I got over to Scout, I was really shocked to find out it's not just with Scout, it's with multiple independent publishers, just because, you get to know other publishers and you become friends, and you guys commiserate and try to come up with ideas. And long story is that the direct market does not order a lot of graphic novels. Like, the key is bookstore. And even in the bookstore, it's like a guess, and it's fully returnable 100% of the time. So I felt like what we're trying to do to communicate with our creators is, a lot of these creators think that, like, when they get to the graphic novel, it's going to be this huge moneymaker, and it's not at all. Like, it's, again, a long game, kind of what the whole scenario is.
For sure.
And a lot of them, you have to wait in the bookstore. Again, really pulling back the curtain for everybody. The bookstore, like, they don't pay you for like 6 months, as a publisher. It is like
6 months, and they might return most of the
exactly. And then what they do is they hold an escrow, a certain percentage, depending on what company you are. They hold in an escrow for any possible returns. So, and if you're the qualityest of companies, you get 30-day net pay with your printer. So, I mean, there's a huge cash flow, like, floating that you're doing for this graphic novel. And it's very, very interesting dilemma, because you can go to Kickstarter, and I understand why now the Booms and the Skybounds are doing it. You get all that money in first, right? Which is wild. You get all that money in first, and it's substantial, because Kickstarter is really the platform for the graphic novel, is what I'm finding out. But I'm just shocked. I don't know if you guys knew those numbers, as far as, at least with independent comics, like with graphic novels, how extremely low that they are. And it's a huge financial, not burden, but commitment by the publisher to print because in offset printing, everybody, if you didn't know, the more you print, the cheaper that graphic novel is. So we have the ability now to do digital, which is small runs, and the digital price pretty much stays the same, but there's a certain level, and it's usually about 1,000, where offset is substantially cheaper than digital. But, even the greatest of trade paperbacks, you're talking $5 a piece for a $20, but you have to, as a company, you have to drop $10,000.
Yep.
So it's really interesting, man. I haven't cracked that nut, and I'm obsessed with it.
I have this theory, and I'm wondering if we're not going to see it bared out a little bit next week at Comics Pro.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to start really segmenting the market.
Okay.
The local comic shop is its own ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So in the local comic shop, single issues may be, especially for an independent, may be the answer. But that independent also has to look at the bookstore model, where trade paperbacks are the answer. So we can't say, well, we need to have one strategy for everything for this book. It's okay. Do you want your book to sell in local comic shops or, in the bookstore market?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, then format it like a manga and sell it in the bookstore market. If you want to sell in local comic shops, single issues, 22 pages, $3.99. These are the benchmarks you have to hit.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine sent me a Euro comic or Europe Comics. I forget the name of
Are they like magazines?
Yeah. No. The trade organization for European comics and manga.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They announced their top sellers, and I had never even heard of the number one top seller in terms of publishers. And it's not until you get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th on the list is Marvel.
Wow. Yeah, the European market, they're never been about floppies. Those are graphic novels, aren't they?
Right. It's because Kodansha and these other companies are formatting their marketing strategy. They're formatting their publication strategy for the market in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think anymore trying to look at it as one market, comic buyers as one market, is a thing that's got to go away. I think we have to look at it as comic buyers that go to Barnes and Noble and comic buyers that go to a local comic book shop. And I think we have to publish differently for the two markets. And I think we have to market differently for the two markets. And I think it's going to be this kind of, I remember the Neil Gaiman comment about sitting on a panel, listening to people talk about barcodes on comics and having to learn way too much about barcodes on comics for someone who writes comics. I think that's kind of where we're at. Is there this? It's time to sit down and say, look, we're not selling to the same people, and that's got to influence everything.
Yeah, so, it's fascinating when you say $3.99. I mean, that's another question to have. Like part of the paper shortage of last year is we shopped around with printers because our main printer couldn't print at all. So, and we're on all the lists, and I'm talking about the main printers that DC, Marvel, like Image, like they all go. It's really the select 3 or 4 printers across the United States. Now, trades are a little bit different. They used to go to overseas, like to South Korea or China, and order in bulk but that kind of stopped because of the shipping problems that was going. So it was kind of everything happening at once. But anyways, you see it across the board. Paper costs have gone up 30 to 40% since last year. And sales numbers have gone down. So remember what I said earlier about the more you print, the less the cost. So I see this mass increase in price of single issues coming.
Well, across the board. When I said $3.99, what I meant is we have to have a standardized pricing. Yeah. We can't have some publishers be publishing 22 pages at $10, some publishers publishing 22 pages at $3. It's got to be standardized because it makes the LCS model instead of a fixed cost model, it's a fluctuating cost model because for 22 pages at DC, I'm paying, my discount is 50% of $6.99, but for 22 pages at Marvel, my discount is 50% at $4.99. Well, that's going to influence spend. And if we don't have some sort of, hey, this is the price standardization, we're going to be between $5.99 and $10 or $9.99. This is what it's going to cost. Then there's no way to know how to order as a retailer because you don't know how much it's going to cost you on any given day. So I think there just needs to be this, okay, for the local comic shop, we're going to publish 22-page floppy stories. And we're going to keep our costs here. And unless there's an economic change. And for the book market, we can afford to say, okay, well, we're going to offset print so we can bring our costs down, do this just for the book market. And I think it's going to require infrastructural changes almost across the board.
That's the key, because the single issues, how many times I've heard this from the publishing standpoint is we get a hot book, right? And you don't know based on the 4 months. Mr. Easter was a really hot book when it came out. Not everybody knew when it came out. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, we want this. It's a crazy assassin bunny that's drawn by Kit Wallace, it's just incredible. But, at this time, 2 and 3 are being ordered. The most of the things that we hear is that just going to wait for the trade. And that's coming from the comic shops.
Well, so I think that's the other part of the problem, right? Your structure means you have to have order numbers for 2 and 3 before number 1 come out.
It's crazy, right?
Right. Because in order for you to get the stuff turned around in time, that's what you have to do. But for me, I can't take a chance on Mr. Easter on issue 2 or issue 3 if I don't know how issue 1 is going to do.
For one.
Right. Without some data. And it's like in finance. I'm sure you deal with this when you look at a stock or you look at some investment opportunity, you're looking at the data from that opportunity before you make a choice. And retailers don't have that chance. We've got to say, well, we're going to order 5 of number 1, 5 of number 2, and 5 of number 3 before we know if we're going to sell any of number 1.
Yep.
And so now we're sitting on 10 copies of comics that we're never going to move.
I thought that you did so well, and I know there's probably a complexity that means you can't do this anymore. For a little while at the wholesale level, Scout Comics had the price difference for trades changed for how many you were willing to pre-buy. So lots of 5, 10, and 25, I think were what they were.
Yep.
And for me, the price difference was different enough, and I was sure enough about that my customers were all going to be buying Scout Comics. I wanted to have them as evergreens, that the 25 pack was fine. And if you could get enough retailers to be those people that were going to be 25 pack people, you would have sure sales to kind of like figure out.
Yeah, maybe that's a great thing that I can bring up with the Comics Pro stores, is because the reason why we would be able to man, we're really pulling back the curtain on today's show. So the reason we were able to do that is because we, on those titles, Jen, is we made a financial commitment to those titles where like By the Horns, White Ash, Solar Flare, the Electric Black, we printed 2,000 to 3,000 of those. So we got our price per unit down substantially, which we could pass it on. But the ones with the smaller that aren't through the bookstore, and that's why I was so excited when we got that bookstore deal, because now we have more orders coming in where, you know, even despite them taking forever and a day to pay you, and it literally is a day, because it's not 160 days, it's 161 days. But anyways, we were able to pass it on to the retailer, you know, pass on those bulk. But when we're actually selling them at the digital rate with the order numbers that we're getting in, we're either at the wholesale level, we're either breaking even or making 20 cents per copy, or breaking even or losing anywhere from 20 cents to $2 a copy, but just to have it out there. This is at the wholesale. We try to bring extra where if we sell them direct to consumer, we can make up that loss. And part of it is, yeah, let's just get it out there. We have a book. It's a great story. You know, as we all know, at certain things getting, you know, because of our multimedia ties, certain things getting optioned, that really helps the book. And then you can invest the money. You just have to be very, very wise with it. And like, I can't tell you guys enough, like how obsessed I am with cracking the trade paperback market. Just the fact that something like Kickstarter, that thing is a cash cow where, you know, what did Boom do? Millions of dollars on the Berserker? I almost get, I don't have it. I'd be fascinated just to see what retailers ordered of Berserker on the direct market through Diamond, Lunar, and Universal, just to see what it was. And I bet you it's like not even close. And it's just like, wow, is there a way to get those people to the stores? You know what I'm saying? Instead of doing it through that third-party platform? Like, is there a way to?
Some of that money was retailer tier offerings at Kickstarter.
Oh, did they do the retailer tiers?
It was because it only did it for hardcover, right? That was all that was for. It was ideally someone that wasn't competing. Yeah.
I think that's the smart thing. If you do, that's kind of what we want to do going forward. The problem is trying to find someone who can do hardcovers, right? That's that's a whole nother world of printing hardcovers compared to soft. But if you offer it on that platform different, you know, where it's that, because that's what they used to do in the prose novels, right? They'd release the larger hardcovers and then a year and a half, the mass market trade paperback that was smaller. I don't know. It's just fascinating. I wish there's a way. I mean, just from a business standpoint, and I'm like an entrepreneur, I love, it's like detective. I feel like Batman in a way where you're trying to figure out and crack the system. And there's been some systems that we're able to crack, and it's so rewarding when you do that. And I wish there is a way, because I imagine a lot of the financial problems with some of the companies that you're hearing about is probably a lot to do with what I just told everybody, you know, as far as putting a lot of your capital into these, because you believe in these amazing books that our creators are doing, right? And it just, the audience isn't there. And then it just becomes a certain type. If you run into an unforeseen obstacle, like, I don't know, a recession or a paper shortage, or the list goes on, you know, it can really hurt a company. And I realize it's not just from the publisher standpoint, like this is from the comic shop standpoint too, because you guys are experiencing it just as much as we are. You know, I'm sure your orders have had to go down because both of you have to be more selective. You cannot, like what you just said, Kyle, you cannot take a risk of having all these excessive subsequent issues of Mr. Easter when you have no idea. So I guess infrastructure, that's where it goes back to the infrastructure. There's got to be a way that our distributors can make it so much easier for you to be like, I want, like, Mr. East is good. And so instead of you guys saying, I'm just going to wait for the trade, to be like, I can get issue 2 or 3 and 4 like that by a click of a button, you know, and it can be sent my way in a cost-effective manner. And that it's not like that with some of our distributors, not to throw anyone under the bus. And it's really irritating because it's like, we have the extra, we're waiting for this demand. The demand's there, but if they're not ordering it from us, you guys cannot get it. So if you want it, you look and it literally says not available.
I wonder if what we're not going to see, and it probably hasn't happened yet, only because of the stair step kind of approach that something like this is going to have to take, and the face of recession and a paper shortage and COVID and all of this kind of stuff that's happening. But when the record industry went through something similar to what has happened with Diamond since 2020, all of a sudden, everybody had to play at the highest level. If you were distributing records, if you were distributing music, you had to be willing to, at the very least, match your best competitor in terms of what they were offering. So if they were offering free overnight shipping, or they were offering overnight shipping as opposed to 2-day shipping, if they were offering, I'll never forget a company that I was working with was really excited because a distributor was offering individual record shippers based on how many you ordered, like how many of a record you would order. So when you ordered Taylor Swift to put it online, they would send them prepackaged in record shippers. So all you had to do is pull the prepackaged thing off, slap a label on it, and ship it out to your online customer.
Cool. Very neat.
Right. Like all of a sudden now everybody has to offer that because otherwise your competition is going to beat you. I wonder if we've not seen that adjustment to standard or to best practices just because nobody knows what they are yet. Because everybody's still trying to dig out of this change.
Oh, it's a huge change. I mean, would you guys feel as shops? It's a great question. Have you felt that your Diamond shipping has either gone down or gotten better since the introduction to Penguin Random House and Lunar?
I fired Diamond before the recession, before 2020.
Okay, so
I haven't. Yeah, I don't work with Diamond anymore, and that has hurt a lot of my business. It's part of the reason why I don't have a brick and mortar retail store anymore. It's part of the reason why I do cons and online and that kind of stuff. But interestingly enough, I see the shipping that other people are talking about, and it's similar to the situations that I have when I order records for sale. Is I have one distributor where my shipping is a lot higher than the other ones, but they're also the guys who are doing sort of the smaller, more niche stuff. If I want to get a small run pressing of a Meatloaf record, I can't get that from the big distributor where everything's cheap. I have to go to the more expensive guy. It's just how it works. And it's a trade-off you make for being able to sell that unique product. So I really do think that, for me at least, I see that Diamond is getting more expensive than they used to be. But so many of the companies that I still carry, I order direct from. Like I was ordering direct from Scout for a while. I ordered direct from SourcePoint and from other companies. So I don't have good numbers like Miss Jen would of, okay, what was the difference now? Because I was starting to diversify really early on when it was really hard.
Yeah, for me, because everyone's been kind of talking about it, I'm going to actually bring numbers with me to Comics Pro to just kind of see what the comparison is. It's like it's easy to do what the cost of shipping is for Penguin Random House, right? None. Lunar is exceptionally low. They're I don't know what kind of deal they've got, but it's really low, and they're passing on the savings. It's clear. But the percentage of the cost of the shipping and compared to the books that I'm getting out of Diamond right now seems like it's not sustainable. And I don't know if it's, I just don't know what the responsibility is in that. If it's because they're shipping less, they don't have as good a deal from the shipping, or really what the hiccup is. And
shipping has gone up too. That's the other crazy thing.
Yeah. And also, I know that the problem also is that UPS, if you don't like a flat rate deal with them, that they do, it's not really the weight, it's the dimensionality. So like how far can you get the dimensionality down and still have the comics arrive safely? Because it doesn't do any good to have the dimensionality down and the price per book low for shipping if it's then all damaged, then it's like 100% loss. So it's tough.
You know, it'd be interesting. It's like, I know one of the
hey, Chris.
Nice
Geek Nerd.
Yeah,
shipping. That, I mean, the other Phil Boyle, one of the biggest, loudest voices and influential voices as a comic shop, especially here in Florida with Coliseum of Comics. How he does it, which is fascinating, is he has drop shipment locations where all the stores go to this one spot to save on, to save on shipping. I was like, is there a way to do that with some of these distributors where you're like, hey, in the Houston area, you can either get it directly to you, or hey, take your car. And I know there's time, employee time, gas, etc. But hey, it might be worth doing. You can set a day around it. Like I had to run to the bank anyways, and it's this location. I mean, maybe that's an idea. I don't know. One of the things that it just instilled in my blood is that when you run into an obstacle, it's just to not just sit there and like stare at the obstacles, try to figure a way around it, or above it, or through it, or down, and I think there's a way, because shipping is crazy. That vending machine we sent you, Jen?
Oh, it sells so much stuff.
Oh, I love to hear that, because it literally cost it was 3/4 the cost to ship it than it was to create it.
Oh yeah, the
Because
size.
of the size of it, even though it weighs 30 pounds, if that's, which is just crazy. So there's got to be, I don't know. I just think there's a way, and getting everybody on the same team. Oh, do LTL. We already do it. Pick up at sea. That's a great idea. That's something that, I mean, that's the other problem, is I don't think a lot of the stores want to work together, right? I know it's unique. Some people feel it as competition and they get angry. I hope that's not as. Do you feel that's the case, Jen?
Not for Houston. Houston.
That's good.
I think of tomorrow. They said, if we have a drop spot and we have everything go to this one space, can you guys make sure not to take each other's boxes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so where I'm at, that would be a problem.
Would it? See, that's so unfortunate.
And it's,
but I get it.
One store would be the problem, and everybody else gets along great. One store would be the problem. Oh, that's funny, Chris. By the way, Chris Columbus has the best voice in comics. I'm just going to throw it out there.
And Chris, I didn't realize, he was in Fort Myers and he stopped by the shop, and it was one of my days when I had gauntlets of meetings and I couldn't say hi to him. So Chris, hello. I wish I would have known that I would have definitely stepped aside to say hello, man. Especially, I think, what is he in Portland? Where is he out of? In Oregon?
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest.
Wow. Yeah. To make a trip to Florida, I mean, literally halfway across. On the other end of the United States.
Chris is pretty Disney obsessed, so I don't think
that's what he was. Yeah, so he was there, but dude, we're not close to Disney. We're 3.5 hours south.
It's excuses.
I saw you bought some cool stuff here. Yeah, that's awesome, buddy. I'm glad, and I'm sure the staff treated you awesome.
Chris,
but this has been really good. Like,
coffee guy, a huge coffee guy. He on all of his shows, he has a company that he has like a million different flavors of coffee. So part of the fun of his show is everyone has to guess what he's drinking for flavor.
Oh, nice.
Chris, I'm going to put this out there. Going to Pittsburgh next week for Comics Pro. I'm driving, and I've already plotted out the comic shops I'm going to stop at on my way to and from, so that I can try and visit every comic shop between my house and the resort. You
should film that and blog it, man. That's awesome.
I've done that before. Miss Jen's seen the pilot of the show.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see it.
Comic book vacation, man.
That's great. Very cool. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be at Comics Pro this year. It's like awful timing. At least for me. I wish I can, because it was the first one in 3 years. I did go to that last one in Portland, a week and a half before the world fell apart.
It was a very interesting one.
But speaking of coffee, this is a cool idea. And this is one of the things that I love. And I'll leave everybody with this. Comics on Coffee. It's a free plug. They're amazing. Tanya and Tony Skoll, they moved right next door, and they have their roaster, and we do coffee flavors. And this is a sampler box with all the different coffees that we have, like Stabby Bunny. So this is something.
Box.
What was that?
When did they start a sampler box?
Oh, this is just a prototype. So it's going. We're going to start doing it. So you get to see it here first, and we're going to get one that's designed like Scout, where you can try all the different flavors of coffee. So it's going to be cool. And I'm a big coffee fan. Well, Jen, thank you so much. You're going, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, have a great time. When is it? Next weekend or this weekend?
We'll leave middle of next week.
Middle of next week. Okay. Will you be able on the show next week, or?
That is a good question.
It's gonna so we can do the show live from Comics Pro.
If I was there, but I'll.
Well, you can be wherever you are, but Miss Jen and I can be in the same room. Depending on when her plane lands, I suppose.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, keep me posted. Absolutely. Well, again, I thought this one was great. And if you guys can help me crack that graphic novel problem that I have, that we have, be awesome. But thank you guys again for joining us for another episode of I Must Ask You a Question with Jen King and James Hake. And we will hopefully see you next week. Again, Comics Pro, we're going to try and maybe live from Comics Pro. That would be awesome.
Perfect.
We'll travel safe. We'll talk to you soon.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to